First of all, I would like to say thank you, Jazakallah khair to Dr. Hani, and also special thanks to also Jazakallah khair to Brother Muhammad Noor who has helped me in making sure this virtual conference, successful. My name is Sharifudin MD Sharani. I'm a professor at the Faculty of Food Science and Nutrition, University of Malaysia Sabah. Today, I would like to talk something about the current issue, which is the post-COVID-19 impact on halal food industry, the next new norm. Basically, the world is facing this really bad situation with the pandemic of COVID-19. And while looking on what is happening now, I just like to foresee or sort of like fast forward on when the dust has settled down and see what will happen, especially to our halal industry. Right. As for today session, there will be 5 items that I'm going to have. Basically, in a nutshell, COVID-19, the impact that we know so far. Number two, a little bit on the global Islamic economy. And then the challenges caused by COVID-19, and the post COVID-19, the new norm, and last but not least, the conclusion. Right. As you can see from McKinsey and Company, which published a very recent report about the COVID-19, which mapped out the virus COVID-19, which has spread worldwide despite containment efforts, which we have seen the effect that more than 1 million, if I'm not mistaken, just under 1.3 million people, that is for today statistics. And it has, sadly, it has caused about 70,000 approximately death around the world. And as we know now, Italy, Spain has, and of course, the United States has overcome the cases in China, and this is very worrying. And to add some more worry to all of us is that the vaccine has yet to develop, tested, and approved. And we know that the scientists are really working hard for it. We know that they are fighting in their labs to find vaccine for the rest of the world. And a lot of countries, the leaders of countries has ordered some kind of confinement, move restriction, travel bans, lockdowns in certain countries, which has resulted panic buying on essential goods. And one of the biggest impacts on this panic buying is that, one, food insecurity towards all the people in the world, but also beyond that, when we talk about food security or food insecurity, we have to look about the halal availability of food for the Muslims. And because of all this, the World Bank has even declared that we are in a recession. And this is something that, very bad news for all of us, not just for the business people, but, daily people like you, me, and everyone. So, 2020 will be a very tough year, not just for me, for you, but for all the people in this world. Right. Now, the State of Global Islamic Economy report 2019-2020, has published basically seven uh, clusters of halal economy, if I can use the word. Of course, you know, the halal food giving the highest share, which just under 1.4 billion US dollars, followed by modest fashion, 283 billion US dollars, media and recreation, 220 US dollars billion US dollars, Muslim friendly travel, 189 billion US dollars, halal pharmaceutical, 92 billion US dollars, halal cosmetics, US dollar 64 billion. This report they published last year. Now, you know, they also projected that these numbers will increase, the value will increase year by year. But again, for this year, with this pandemic COVID-19, we should think again, and we should sort of like recalibrate again the numbers towards what we are facing at the moment. Right. Now, one of the main effects or one of the main impact of COVID-19 is the movement restriction, either between districts, province, states, you know. But at the ground, what we can see at the food product chain or the supply chain, as we know that the raw material either comes from the farm, from the sea, or the vegetables, and they are being brought to manufacturers, for processing, for value-added products, for instance, like milk being processed to cheese, or meat being processed to burger patties, fish become surimi, for instance, and then they get processed and distributed along the supply chain. Then it been traveled out, or it been supplied to retail shops, to restaurants, and at the end it landed on our table as the final consumers. Now, if we can sort of like think, or one step back and look at the activities, the complex activities, which the main source is actually the human resource. With the travel restriction, with the movement restriction, all this complex network of production change is basically having some, or will have big difficulties. How a person have to go to work, because at the moment, for instance, in Malaysia we only allow essential goods, like rice, bread, milk, foods like that. But other than that, people will have some kind of difficulties. In Malaysia, we are experiencing that, for instance, like the bread company, the bread manufacturer, they are producing bread at the maximum production, you know. Although at the moment we don't have any food shortage, but again, it shows that, at a certain level, not just Malaysia, but throughout the world, people are buying more than they should, aka, or in other words, panic buying. Now, I would like to discuss within this a very, in this short period. I just would like to highlight one effect from this COVID-19, which is the movement restriction. Because to me, I can see the movement restriction will have a huge impact, at least, to all of us, the business people, the manufacturer, the consumer, and of course the authorities. Now, referring to this diagram, um, when the government, when the authorities issued the movement restriction or the lockdown, you know, as the consumer, you know, especially we are focusing on Muslims. Um, Definitely, we are looking for um, halal and toy food. Not just any food, but food which is halal and toy. And with the restriction, we are looking at you know going to shops at infrequent numbers of trips, meaning to say we have to plan perhaps once in a week or once in 2 weeks, depend on which state or which country you are living. But at the moment, for instance, in Malaysia, we only, you know, only the head of family is allowed to go out and to buy essential goods. Now, because of that movement restriction, you can see, in the news, perhaps everywhere in the world, people are panic in terms of buying essential goods. When this occurs, one of the side effect is that the availability of food has become decreasing. People are buying stuff or goods that is not essential for them, or basically they don't need the extra things that they are buying. And one of the things that we can learn from this COVID-19 is that we have to learn about sustainable shopping or sustainable purchasing, if I can use the word. And due to the movement restriction, people has to work from home and being isolated at their home. Now, if we put the same scenario at the food manufacturer, how the food manufacturer can supply or can fulfill the demands by the consumer, for them to get their people, to get their human resource back to their factory and get the relevant raw materials is going to be challenging in this kind. And of course, they need to maintain the halal environment during production. They need to uphold the halal integrity, every step of their processing. And, these are challenging times, therefore, they need to really um, think about it, or about their profits and losses, in these difficult times. But one thing, I would say, the food sector, as compared to more seriously hit, for instance, like aviation, um, you know um, industry or oil and gas. I think the food industry somehow or other have a bit buffer in terms of this COVID-19 impact. Now, let's look at the HCBs. What kind of challenges do they face during this time? Now, definitely around this time, there are companies who wants to either to renew or apply for halal cert. So, with the movement restrictions, how are they going to conduct their audits? How are they going to do their site audits? You know, and during these difficult times, what the fees, the charges, how are they going to implement them? You know, um, Basically they can move from one part to another. So is desk audits is good enough, or is there going to be more um, creative and innovative way to audit those applications? Now, in terms of government, it is utmost of it is the most important thing for them to do. Their priority, the utmost priority for them, is to maintain the safety and health of the people, you know, and to maintain and preserve the public trust on them, and stating that they are doing their best to make sure that the public safety is their interest. And by doing so, they need to plan on how to help the country's economy, so that it would not collapse, as I mentioned earlier. we are facing recession, not just certain parts of, but the whole world is facing this recession. But uh, the government needs to have a plan on how to deal with this. I do apologize for my clothes. It's giving you some kind of music there. I do apologize for that. Right now, the post COVID-19, the new norm. Right. Of course, there's a lot, but again, in this very short period, I just would like to discuss the five of them. Number one, hygiene and health. Now, we know in Islam, hygiene is number one, right? We are, you know, Islam teaches us to be clean, every time. During Salah, during our activities, teaches us, how to go to the bathroom, to the toilet, and what to do before and after. So in Islam, there should be no issue as a Muslim, sorry, as a Muslim, it should be no issue for hygiene and health because it is part of our religion. Now, if we take that in context, um, within the halal food production. If I take another example, for instance, like GMP, good manufacturing practices, where the personnel, they need to wash their hands, for instance, to make sure they are clean before entering the processing line. Now, with the post COVID-19, do we need to have, for instance, sanitized tunnel? Not just wash their hands, make sure their clothes are clean, but do we need to sanitize them? Like going through a sanitized tunnel. Now, for big companies, I don't think it will be much of a problem because they have the money, they have the resources to do it. But for SMEs, for the small medium entrepreneurs, or small medium companies, do they have the resources to do that? Do they have the financial to do that? It will put some kind of financial burden if they want to go up to that level. But again, I'm sure that there is a better um, solution. For instance, like as simple as wearing clean clothes every time they go to the processing line. Wear gloves, wear boots. We need to start to wear colored uniforms. What I mean by colored uniform is that, for instance, like for those workers in the raw material department, perhaps what I'm trying to say, a color coded uniform. That's what I'm trying to say. Meaning to say that if those people who are in raw material, perhaps they are wearing for what yellow uniform, for instance. Those who are in the production, they are wearing blue uniform, for instance. Those who are in what do you call that, in storage, perhaps they are wearing I don't know, green perhaps. But again, the idea is a color coded uniform just to distinct one person, one department, or one personnel from the other personnel in different departments. So if you have, for instance, like the raw material personnel who are wearing yellow, and he is in the processing line, which all the personnel wearing blue, then we know that somebody who is not authorized is in the processing line, and that would help to maintain some degree of hygiene and health. And of course, in the health, I'm sure, for instance, like in Malaysia, where the workers needs to take some kind of injection, a vaccine, sorry, vaccine, uh, before they are working with food. And I'm sure other parts of the world would have the same kind of regulations. Yeah? Um, Now, what does it what does it mean in terms of health? Sorry, what does it mean for halal certification? What it means for halal certification is that um, we need we need a new set of uh, notes or audit notes, yeah, to look at the um, health of the personnel. And I would say that the HCBs should put some kind of emphasis on the health of the personnel who are working in the you know in that company. Right. Next would be the quality documentations and records. Now, um, quality assurance. If we talk about quality assurance, documentations and record is the backbone. And one thing that we can learn from this COVID-19 is that when one person caught, when one person catches the virus, the COVID-19, the doctors will trace back who are the person that is contact with that, with that person, and where does this person has go around, has this person goes to supermarket, has this person goes to the train, taking a train, taking a bus, where does he go, who does, where does this person go, and who does this person in contact with. So in essence, what the doctors are doing, they are doing traceability. And if we are aware, or we are familiar with quality assurance, as you know, um, that traceability is the backbone of a good quality assurance system. And as in halal, in halal certification, I've been talking about halal quality assurance since 2008 until now. I can't put more words than to say, for every company who has halal certification, they must have halal assurance system. And for those HCBs, I also urge them to come up with a halal assurance system. Perhaps we can come up with one universal halal assurance system which can be used, any parts of the world. At the moment, I know Malaysia has one halal assurance system, which is based on HACCP. Now, either we can follow the Malaysian model, or we can come up with a similar model. But again, what we need is basically a good comprehensive halal assurance system where we can have documentations, where we can have records, so that we can record where does this raw material comes from, which animal we slaughtered, which part of the animal that has been shipped or has been carried out to certain factory, what does this factory do with this raw material, and after the finished product, where does this finished product is being sold, and basically where does it sells. And part of this traceability is actually, if I can just jump to number 5, which is utilization of IR 4.0, Industrial Revolution 4.0. You know, I think 2 years back, um, in Philippines, there was a presentation about blockchain in halal industry, and several years back, in one of the conferences in Malaysia, also I heard about blockchain in halal industry. Now, although again and again in seminars and conferences, we heard about the utilizations of blockchain and what it can do, but again, until now, um, it is not fully utilize this blockchain, because one of the strength of this blockchain is actually they can do a tremendous um, you know effort at the or about this traceability. The blockchain can really help the traceability of halal food products. So this will be, I hope that after COVID-19, the halal industry, especially the food halal industry, will look seriously in this blockchain and use it in their premises, uh, for instance, like for traceability, because it will help them a lot. And during this crisis, the blockchain would be a huge help. Now, next would be the sustainable food supply and purchasing. Earlier I mentioned um, about the panic buying. Now, in Islam, we are being taught by our religion to buy what is for us. I mean, the things that we want, that for our needs. Buy just enough for you. Don't make it a habit to buy more than what you need, because at the end of the day, we will affect, one, the supply of the product. Number two, there will be, we are taking someone's share, and that is not good for other people. And we need to behave accordingly, where we only buy things that we need, not what we want, you know, and therefore it will make sure the supply of essential good is always there, you know, and don't do panic buying. And one more thing, don't do panic saving. Huh? Saving and panic buying is two different things. All right. The new norm social etiquette. Now, during this COVID-19, you can see people have their distance approximately about 1 meter, wearing mask, always wash their hands, using hand sanitizer. If we look deep in our religion, in Islam, uh, again, Islam has teach us this. So it is a new norm now for us, for instance, like, have the distance between one person to another. When you're wearing mask, we need to think about the other person next to us. Perhaps before this we have not so concerned about the person next to us. But with this COVID-19, we are not just concerned with the other person, but we are also concerned about the effect of us towards our surrounding. And last but not least is the utilizations of IR 4.0. Now, one of the things that we can see, at least in the Malaysian scenario, is that the utilization of 3D printing on helping the medics and the health professionals in terms of making some of their what do you call that, utensils, if I can use it. They use the word PPE, personal, I can't remember what we call PPE. Now, basic, for instance, like for example, face shield. You can use the 3D printer to do that. But again, another application I would like to suggest is that we need to start to think to utilize the 3D printing for food. We need to start to invent so-called ink, halal ink, and halal edible ink, so that, for instance, like, we can create food. We just print, for instance, like chocolates. I do know that in the market we have a 3D printer for chocolates. You can Google it out. You can look at the YouTube. Not just chocolates. Now they have made pancakes and all of stuff. But again, commercially, is quite limited in terms of the edible ink. As for now, it's only open to chocolates, but and candies. But what I'm trying to suggest is that if we really understand, the the uh, the technology side of, for instance, like the 3D printer, blockchain, and then the whole concept of IR 4.0, halal issues, halal challenges can be minimized, and especially during this COVID-19, or only Allah knows what will be in the future. We can minimize this impact that we are seeing today. Yes, you might argue with me, big companies, they have the financial. What about the small medium companies? But again, as I said, small medium companies, perhaps they can start with a very easy, for instance, like 3D printer, try to understand the blockchain, try to get into the traceability, and things like that. Right. So as a conclusion, the global community is facing COVID-19 pandemic, which will affect the health and economy. The halal food manufacturer can no longer, business as usual. HCBs, halal certification bodies, can no longer rely on the traditional method of certification, and the new norm post COVID-19 will embrace and being practiced. And these are two of the reference that I use. Thank you, Jazakallah khair khairan, to everyone who has listened to this web seminar. Take care, everyone, and inshallah, we pray so that during Ramadan we can go for our Tarawih at the mosque. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.